What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another One Piece related video. In this video, guys, we're going to go over my OP05 Rebecca list. On top of that, we're going to go into the discussion of how I came to this list. So to start it off, guys, when we look at Rebecca, everybody pretty much assumes that Rebecca is a control deck, right? You get card advantage, you cannot attack, you have more life than a general two-colored leader. Just kind of screams control. And then the other Dressrosa cards that we get is a lot of removal, a lot of cost reduction, a good amount of draw power and defensive tools. Screams removal. All right, so like ultimately, this is a control deck. That's just how it's telling us it should be played. But Rebecca as a control deck is worse than Sakazuchi. Same color combination. The biggest difference is Sokka has a generic attack coming out of him every single turn. On top of that, his ability power is not gate-kept by typing. He can find cards. You just discard a card, draw a card. That's just a generic card filtering ability. While Rebecca's is straight up card advantage, his is card filtering. When you have a generic card filtering versus a specific card advantage, you generally take the generic thing because you have more versatility of what you could have in there. So there's that threat that there's cards that your opponent might not know are in your list. With a Rebecca, you have to run Dressrosa. So the problem that Rebecca ends up facing is her list is pretty much solved. Everybody runs the same list. Everybody understands what she's going to have. Your deck is stuck in a rut, right? Like everybody knows what you're going to do. And even once this list, if this list takes off and people like this list, it could still run into that same issue. But what she, so a lot of her advantages are negated, right? Because there's a leader that does what Rebecca does, but better because of the fact that they can be more ambiguous and what's the word I'm looking for? More unsolvable. They're harder to figure out, and there's so much more that they can tech in and do and different things and still gain advantages. You can't do that as easily with Rebecca. So what is the way to solve Rebecca? Well, let's look at an old card that Rebecca's had access to since she came out, and that's Bellamy. He's an OP01 2-drop vanilla, but he's a Dressrosa vanilla. All right, he's a 2-drop 4K. How does this help Rebecca? Well, because the cards that came out in OP05, you need more early attacks from Rebecca. You need more mid-game pressure from Rebecca. Just building up a board of blockers just isn't doing it right now, and it won't do it against the Rob Lucci Sakazuchi list. Like, the Sakaluchi, or what people want to call it, that list answers the idea of, oh, I have like 3 blockers, get past that. And they're like, all right, I removed 2 of them. And then you're sitting there going, that's a problem. That's just not going to cut it this set. So why having an attacker would that fix that problem? Well, because you're already putting pressure on his life. The blockers just sit there and be reactive. And if your opponent has an easy reaction of Rob Lucci, get rid of 2 blockers, you've gained no value from those blockers. If the response is Rob Lucci, get rid of a Bellamy, well, your Bellamy's probably already attacked. So you've gained some type of advantage out of Bellamy. So attacks is kind of what you need to deal with that. On top of that, a lot of the other decks, the only blockers you need are in the late game. So having 7 to 8 blockers is probably sufficient. And guess what? My list still has 14 blockers in it, but we've swapped out some of those blockers for better blockers for what we get. Recursive value and stronger early game. So Bellamy here is a card that we've put in for that early game to mid game pressure that we kind of lacked when we ran Idios as our 2-drops. So what else is making Bellamy better? Putting 1 Dawn on him every turn doesn't seem super efficient. It's not bad, but it's not super efficient, is it? Well, it's not. So we have Riku Doldo. So King Riku gives plus 2k to a Dressrosa type character on play and on KO. And he's a 4-drop blocker with 5k attack. So he becomes an attacker himself, which is great. Also, he's a blocker if we need him. Great. And if he dies, one of our other characters gets bigger. And so it becomes harder for them to remove. Also great. So Riku then allows us on turn 1, Bellamy, turn 2, Riku. Bellamy's now 6k, swing in. We eat either a 2k out of our opponent's hand super early on, maybe 2 1ks if they really don't want to take damage, or they just take damage, which to some people doesn't sound like a great thing, right? We're giving them cards early. We don't want to do that in many strategies. Well, with Rebecca, giving them those cards early says that there is a looming threat that we can turn 3, turn 4 Luffy immediately. because of the fact that there is a threat that we now have you at low enough you're in our kill range. So now they have to start playing around that idea. On top of that, if they don't get rid of the Bellamy, think about it this way. If they don't get rid of the Bellamy, he's a much better card to put a con gun on early. Why? Well, he's a 4K opposed to a 2K of like Rebecca and Idios and 3K of Bardo. So this 4K becomes a 10K. A 10K double attack swinger early on is a lot more threatening than an 8K 2 attack swing. 8K double attack swing. So automatically Bellamy becomes stronger. Okay, so Riku gives us that early curve. What other card could there be? Well, we replace what was our 3,000 worlds with Hound Blazes. While Hound Blaze doesn't remove as high, it gives another +3 to something. +3 to Bellamy makes him a 7K early. Hey, that's the sweet spot number. Or even in the mid game, we can get rid of the blocker, swing in Bellamy. We're still threatening life. So far, right now, with just 2 cards added, we are playing more traditionally to what other decks are doing. 3 cards technically added, I guess. Bellamy's added here. But we now are traditionally playing better to those. But we haven't really fully cut the things that make us Rebecca. We still have the 4 Olumbuses. So guess what? Houndblaze can remove up to 6s with an Olumbus out. And guess what? We now get to add in One-Legged Soldier to replace the fact of having to run Tashigis before. And we can cut Gats completely out of the list. A lot of people are like, oh, you don't cut those, right? You need at least 10 2Ks. No, you don't. You know why? Because now we have Rebecca's. And Rebecca's can get us back Bartolomeo's. So we can get a 2K back from Rebecca. So if there's a Bardo in the trash, that's not that big a deal. Rebecca gets that back to us. Rebecca can play our Bardos, can play our Kiroses, can play our One-Legged Soldiers, can play our Rebeccas. There's a lot of cards that she can play out of this list. Not all of them optimal, right? You don't want to really play a Bardo off of Rebecca because it comes in rested, but you can play a Kiros, and Kiros is going to be hard for them to remove. And you potentially get to remove something with Kiros. If you have an Orlumbus on the field and you've already gotten rid of something, or if you have a 3-legged soldier or one-legged soldier on the field, you can just pop him -3 something. Rebecca, get the Kiros into your hand if he's in your trash, or if you have one in hand, you can get back like Bardo, or you can get back any of your bigger guys as well. Play the Kiros, pop the thing that you just reduced by 3. That's pretty good. So you get recursive and card value, which is what she always offers. Mon Cherie does the same thing, but in a smaller range and returns things to the bottom of the deck, which is fine as well. So Houndblaze, though, we have 8 cards in this list that reduce the cost of them. So this is just our removal piece, and it bottoms things, which is great. But it also pumps our early attacks on Bellamy's, which is huge. On top of that, this is another card that in the late game can pump our Luffy's if we want. Guess what? Our Luffy, for 5, say we have a Luffy out, for 5 Dawn, our Luffy becomes for 3, he becomes a 6K double attacker who gets to swing twice in a turn. That's pretty good. So, plus 6K double attacker, swings twice in a turn. So now he's a 13K. Well, if we get the Houndblaze to get their blocker out of the way, for 5 Dawn, we can get rid of the low-cost blocker, and our Luffy has now gotten a total of plus 9K with double attack. So our Luffy's now a 16K swing in double attack twice. That pretty much guarantees we're getting through them. And we still have 5 more Dawn, so we can develop a blocker if we need to, which guess what? We can Riku, if we really wanted to go super ham into the make sure Luffy hits, play Riku as well. We get a 4-drop blocker, and Luffy's now an 18K. So that's pretty devastating. That's a pretty good way. That just ups the combo, opposed to having to put 2 con guns. We now have multiple things that buff, so that's pretty huge. And it's just a great removal piece. And then out of life, if it comes out of life, we can bounce a 3-cost back to their hand. If they're putting down a 3-cost blocker just to stay alive, boop, back to the hand. Pretty big. I mean, probably won't do that, but it can be relevant and it could happen. So the only other cards we really have to talk about, I mean, Rebecca and Mon Cherie's, you're going to see those everywhere. Card's insane. We added in a couple Lucci's. Lucci's just too good. We need to have some extra removal, and he's a 4-drop 6K. 4-drop 6K body that removes 2 things. That's just too good. We just can't not have that, and it synergizes really well with some of the cards in our deck, but we don't want too many of them because he doesn't have any counter power to him. So we've cut a Luffy and we've cut a Kiros. We tossed in 2 Rob Lucci's. We've cut the Luffy's down to 3. 3 is sufficient. We have a lot of ways out. You know, Luffy, you needed 4 in the past just to make sure you got your cards back into your deck. But with Rob Lucci's, with Moncheries, we have ways of doing that. We don't need the 4 Luffy's. And to get a top end, we only really need to see 1 or 2 Luffy's anyways. And we needed ways to dig through the deck still. So, like, we have our Olymbuses, we have our Kiroses. Unfortunately, the deck doesn't thin itself as well as it used to, because of some of the card selection choices we've had to make, right? Like, Orlumbus is our best way to remove stuff. Sabos, we have 3 of. That's one of our best ways to remove stuff. I don't want to remove any more 2-cost blockers, and I don't want to make Houndblaze a 3 of, because I want to make sure we draw one, because we can't hit it with Rebecca ability. So it's kind of like, okay, in terms of where we need cards here, we're kind of stuck with the numbers we have. The only other selection that we could do is technically go down to 2 con guns, but I don't want to do that because we're kind of banking on them even more so than the control deck. But the way that we use them is going to be different. It's not necessarily, you know, a lot of people would be like, oh yeah, well, you could always put those on your lower costs, but nobody really did that. Now we have reasons to. You can put it on Bellamy's, you can put it on Kiroses, you can put them on characters, and we have other ways of buffing them and making them stronger, and they come back more consistently too. So that makes it even harder for people to deal with. So because we don't need to put cards back into our deck as much, we really rely on the Rebecca ability to keep putting a card in every turn, and then hopefully we don't return that many cards to the deck all that often. It's really going to be Moncheries, Rob Lucci's, and when we need to double swing with Luffy, so you don't double swing as often. But let's actually show you guys a game of this and kind of showcase what this deck could do. Hopefully we end up with a good game. No promises. I'm going to hit 1 refresh just in case. I have had a lot of games where I've just drawn really poorly and it didn't go very well. But I've also had a lot of games with this deck where I drew extremely well. See, like, my opponents, like, oh man, there's so many people that just don't refuse to play against the Rebecca, which is super annoying. Like, I get it. She's not typically a deck that anybody wants to play into. But I think that she's actually very, very suited in this meta. I've struggled with a handful of decks. Let's go second. Generally, our curve does best on second now. I would generally want to have a Bellamy, but this is actually just a pretty good hand. Like, this is just a hard hand to say no to. Oh, okay. Nami on 1. Did he miss? Or is he just... Hard decisions. I'm calling Zoro. He's going to take the Zoro, right? Ah, you got a Luffy. You got a 5-drop Luffy. Draw done. Oh, and we got a Houndblaze. Hell yeah. So let's activate. Perfect. Coliseum, deploy, and turn. Wow, that turned into a very good start for us here. So even without the Bellamy, we actually have a very strong start. Now we just take it. No trigger effect. Well, we found a second Coliseum. Alright, so Zoro is the card that we kind of need to get rid of this turn. We don't really have a way of doing that, though, sadly. I mean, we can play Rebecca, get this Kiros. I think I actually like that, because it gives us a blocker. We take this Kiros, we deploy this Kiros, we pop this Nami. We put a Riku there. Yeah, that's fine overall, actually. That's completely fine. We're okay with this. Because now he's gonna get the swing on the Zoro. Like, we had no way of getting rid of the Zoro that turn, sadly. I mean, the best way we could have done it, I guess, would have been Soldier, but we would have wasted Houndblaze just to prevent the one draw of the Dawn. Which we don't necessarily want to do. I don't want to use a 2K for this, but we have no counter in hand, which is kind of rough. No block. I don't want to use Orlumbus because I wanted to develop the Orlumbus next turn. Because we can Orlumbus, target him, tap this, and then we can Houndblaze shit out of the way. Yeah, I guess we're just taking a hit. That's fine. Rebecca's a fine hit. That puts guards into the yard. This is fine. We're okay. Wait, I mean, this isn't, like, ideal. Okay, cool. We can get rid of this, and then we can swing in and take that out. Oh, cool. Yeah, you just got rid of cards out of my hand. What do you get? You got my Rebecca and the other Coliseum. Sweet. We'll block here. We don't want to take too much damage. Draw cards. Draw done. Deploy Olympus. Give minus KO Kairos, tap stage, Hound Blaze. Give it to Gyros so he can swing at life. Try to remove Zoro. If he protects the Zoro, then we just swing and take out the Zoro. That's not a big deal. But now he's going to probably attack our Olympus here. That's fine. We'll get a card out of his hand and still take out his Zoro. Because there's no way he's going to stop an 8k swing on his Zoro. But, you know, we would definitely want to use that 8k at his life usually, but we don't want him getting more ramp. Like, he's already ramped once. If he got a second ramp, he would be able to do a lot this turn, so we needed to stall that out a bit. Alright, Luffy, what are you swinging at? Swinging at life? That I will 2k if he only does a 6k at life. He could do 2 7ks, which would be, yeah, that'd be annoying. Oh. Yeah, no. Take my Olympus, that's fine. What you don't know is my next turn is going to be Olympus Kairos. No block. 2k. It's fine. Draw. So we have 8 Dawn here. So we drop the Olympus. Activate. Minus. Target. Tap stage. Kyros. Remove. Activate. Moncherie for sure. End turn. Because we have no good attacks. But next turn, we are threatening lethal attacks. 3 life attacks here. So he needs something. We have Moncherie to get back Rebecca. Rebecca can get back Riku. Riku gives us an attack on life. It's pretty good. Yeah, no blocker. We have to resolve it. No trigger. That's a great card, actually. That gets rid of any blocker he drops out. Oh, he's going to 10-drop Luffy here. So he ramped into 10-drop Luffy. He gets another swing this turn. Okay. So I need a couple blockers out. Man, we drew pretty much no counters, but we also kept a really greedy hand on my part. He has to kill us this turn. So he has 2 Dawn. We could go to 0. He gets a rush attacker 5-drop Luffy next turn, so that'd be 1-2. We need a 2k to stay alive next turn. No block, we resolve it. Oh. How many cards do we have in trash? We're at 13. No trigger. That's fine. Resolve it. There's our 2k. Okay. Alright, so Moncherie would get us back Rebecca. Rebecca would allow us to play him, which doesn't do anything right now. But we definitely need the Rebecca blocker, right? Guess how many cards in hand? Or do we? Do we need the Rebecca blocker? I need to count this out here. We need a blocker, for sure. 2 blockers, potentially. So... we have to do math here. So what I'm thinking is we could swing lethal, potentially, right? A double attack takes out 2 of his life if he can't counter out of it. So we'd do this. We'd Hound Blaze to give a plus bonus and then just not pop anything back. We'd give him +6. If we could find a second Kong gun, that would work. It's not necessarily the best option, though. Cancel. Let's play a Moncherie. Let's just do the Moncherie route. Return Blaze and that. Give me Rebecca. Deploy Rebecca. Riku wouldn't do anything here. Well, he'd give us a blocker to hand. That's right. That was the point, right? We do this. Choose not to play a character, right? Seven at lead. So if he wants to play a 5-drop Luffy, he'd only get to play a 5-drop Luffy this turn. And then swing 3, and then next turn we'd have lethal. Right? Would we? We need Riku to survive. Riku wouldn't survive. Would we have lethal still? How many cards do we have in trash? 10? Not really. Nah, we wouldn't have lethal. We'd need to fill the yard more, which we already... Yeah. So we missed our lethal swing attempt. But we need to remove this Luffy, basically. This is a rough one. Okay, you got 2 cards out of my hand. What do you get? He got my Bardo. He got one of my 2Ks. That's rough. We could do another Houndblaze swing with Orlumbus this turn, right? So he can drop 5-drop Luffy with Rush. And it would have the gets past blockers, right? So he could put 3 on it, which would take it out of my range, I think, to 2k out of. So that puts me to 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so if he puts all 3 on a 5-drop Luffy, we lose. If he doesn't have the 5-drop Luffy... Alright, so we block with Rebecca. Resolve. Alright, you have a queen. Cool. Okay. Draw a card. Alright, so we need to get past this queen. What cards do we have that we can get back with either Rebecca or Moncherie? Actually, so we activate. Back our other Rebecca. Counters out of it, which he did. We don't go for it this turn. We activate Rebecca. Take a Rebecca. Might have been smarter to play another him, but now we have enough power here. Swing 7. There's his Rad Beam. We enter. So he needs a Luffy that he can just stack all of it on. Or he needs another 10-drop Luffy, actually. If he can do another 10-drop Luffy, he wins this. I mean, this game's gone pretty long, and we are looking in a very disparaging state because we weren't drawing any counters early. Block with Rebecca. So he's setting up for like a 10-drop Luffy. A second 10-drop Luffy. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I think we lose here. If he swings properly. If he doesn't swing properly, we can get out of this. If he stacks it all on, like... If he just does a vanilla 6k swing... Nah, he's smart. He got out of it. Oh, Relentless. There's no way he develops here. If he develops here, I think we can win next turn. Nah, he's got to go for the risk it, swing it all. Yeah, he wins it. Ooh, dude, that was a close one. Oh, he wants to rematch too. Wow. Uh, um, but hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys follow, like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next one. Till then, catch you later, guys.